The first video I ever did was for a game called Detention. It was a debut game for Red Candle Studios and I thought it was great. The second game has been deplatformed all across the board though, because they made a Winnie the Pooh Xi Jinping joke. But that was a while ago now. Let's see if there's been any new developments for the delivery of Devotion. Oh, it was knocked back by GOG recently. It might never come out. This shit's depressing. Time for some escapism. Papers, Please is a dystopian document thriller. Lucas Pope Games, that's the developer, the guy who made the game, Lucas Pope, his games, they can be a bit of a tough sell. Very intriguing, but incredibly niche. If I had to sum up how Papers, Please plays, how it feels to play Papers, Please is like this. You play as a border crossing officer in a fictional country called Arstotzka. Arstotzka and its neighbours are loosely based off of the Eastern Bloc nations during the Cold War, so naturally you don't make shit. Your job is to check all passports and required documents for their validity. This job is made more difficult as time goes on, as the amount of documents, dates, official seals and other bureaucratic rubbish you have to analyse piles higher and higher. Every now and then you're faced with moral dilemmas, and you may be forced to choose between helping desperate people or being able to afford basic living expenses for you and your family. Again, you don't make shit. All the while, a clandestine plot is unfolding between the authoritarian government and a sinister resistance movement. This game came out in 2013 and was created by pretty much one guy. He got the idea from having to frequently travel between Singapore and the US for work, as well as from spy films where the protagonist would have to con border guards with fake documents. From there, he flipped the premise on its head to create the initial foundation for Papers, Please. Even though this game was created by one person, or maybe because it was created by one person, it runs perfectly. And so should. The graphics are incredibly simple. And Lucas Pope was an experienced game dev at the time he made this. Like a lot of 2D pixel art games, Papers, Please looks good. I'd hesitate to call it pretty though. But being loosely based on 1980s East Berlin, things aren't exactly rainbows and butterflies, so I don't think it's supposed to be pretty. And the art style / colour palette does do a really good job at depicting that Soviet era drabness.
Bashi, Botinki! Those cannot be your only shoes. What am I saying? It's Russia. I bet people come from miles around just to have their picture taken in those. Shite! Piece of... How are you a superpower?
However, even though the graphics are very simple, this is a game where you have to scrutinize people's appearances to make sure that they match up with their passport and ID photos. Luckily, the character designs are all very visually distinct. I could recognize Georgie or that creepy inspector anywhere. The ID photos are not identical to the characters they're portraying though. They're smaller, having no color and fewer pixels to work with. But they always look similar enough that if it's fake, you can pretty clearly spot it. And music transition to talk about the game's music. Oh wait, Papers, Please doesn't have any music. Well, it does have the opening song, which also plays at the end of each day. And the two different tracks that play depending on which ending you get. So besides the ambient sound coming from the road, you work in total silence during the day. That may have been on purpose so that dumb players like myself could think more better, but I suspect it may have been due to a lack of time or even necessity really. All the sound effects really sound like what they should sound like. Stamp sound stampy, suicide bombers. And though limited in variety, the speech sounds of the people you talk to sounds good. Lucas Pope used text-to-speech to create the voice lines, which he then garbled using Audacity and GarageBand. Let's get to the gameplay. In Papers, Please oh god, this sounds boring. It sounds really boring when you write it out. You make sure people's documents are in order before either letting them into the country or turning them away. That's it. Look, you'll just have to take my word for it, that's an engaging experience. Even if you can't necessarily call it fun, you only have a limited amount of time to process people, and the wage you earn is based on how many people you got through successfully. You don't get paid for the border crossings you fuck up, and if you mess up too many times, you'll actually start getting fined as well. That's money you need to support your family. The game will also throw these moral conundrums at you. Do I split up this desperate family for not having the right documentation? Or do I let them in anyway, earning myself a citation and maybe a fine? If I don't make enough money in a day, that can mean my own in-game family may have to go without heat or food for a night. That doesn't sound too bad, but a night without heat or food can cause a family member to get sick. Which means you have to buy medicine, which means even less money for food and heat, and things just kind of snowball from there. And if you go into debt or your family dies, it's game over. The difficulty ramps up slowly but exponentially as the documents and details you have to cross-check multiply. At first you're just checking people's passports for nationality, expiry date, issuing city, and matching the picture on their passport to the passport holder. That sounds like a fair amount of things just said, but eventually you do get your eye in. And by the end of the game, you'll find you've developed your own system to speedily process people and earn your day's wage. Which is good, because by the end of the game you'll also have to check, wait, if they're Ostotskin they require an ID. Match ID date of birth to passport date of birth. Match ID name to passport name. ID issuing district. If they're not Ostotskin, they require an entry permit. Entry permit expiry date. Match entry permit ID part number to passport ID number. Entry permit official stamps and seals. Entry permit length of stay. Entry permit reason for entry. If it's for work, they require a work permit. Work permit expiry date. Work permit expiry date. Entry permit. I think you get the idea. There's a lot more than what I listed, and some things that are implemented are repealed the next day, so you really have to stay on your toes. At least it's not an Australian border crossing. You'd be checking their bags for fruit and small dogs and shit.
Australia is a wonderful island, with a treasure trove of unique plants, animals, and people.
It has to be protected.
They were her dogs as well. What's her problem? Anyway, every time you spot a discrepancy, your heart actually swells, knowing you can reject this person and move on to the next. But when you can't find a problem, and you think it might be a valid ID, you kind of exhaust your mental checklist, and it kind of plays like a horror game. You're under such a time crunch that, at a certain point, you just have to say, fuck it, and hope you've done everything right. Every time you approve someone for entry, you clench your butt, and you wait. Wait to see if you'll be given a citation, knowing that it could cut into your meager income. However, like a horror game, when you break the suspense too often it becomes a lesser experience. By messing up too often, you find out that the suspense you felt was the thing pulling you along. And without it, you just kind of feel irritated. Papers, Please does do a good job of keeping you on your toes though, without being too hard for the most part. But if you mess up too many times in a row, you've ruined your whole run, and you might as well start the day over. An option for a shorter day cycle would have been nice. As it is, the days can kind of drag on a bit, especially towards the end of the game. I also wonder if your frame of mind can affect your engagement with the game. The first time I played it, I was on holiday. I finished it in a couple days and I really enjoyed it. But this time around though, well, after a busy day at work, I get over it a fair bit faster and I'm kind of forcing myself to play it for the review. It may also be that it just loses some of its engagingness. Is that a word? There's no spell check error. It loses some of its engagingness on repeat playthroughs. Speaking of which, this game has multiple endings and a story. It has 20 endings all up. The first 12 are all variations on "you messed up, game over, try again." But the other 8 only trigger if you make it to the end of the game. So if you don't want any spoilers, skip to here. All good? They're not missing out much. As I mentioned before, Lucas Pope came up with the concept first, then the actual gameplay, and then the story. The story is pretty out of your control. Arstotzka is loosely based on either East or West Germany during the Cold War. It could have been any country really that's been split apart by war, but the dystopian Eastern Bloc themes are laid on pretty thick. Similar to our world, there is tension between East and West. The tension seems to be fizzling out a bit though, and the opening of the border is a result of that. This allows for families to reunite and citizens in diaspora to return home. The newly opened checkpoint you work at is in the city of East Grestin, which borders West Grestin in the completely different country of Kolechia. Not everyone seems happy about the border opening though.
No, chicky freaky blanket! Papali papali sokia! Na 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 bliatman!
A terrorist attack leads to more stringent entry protocol and tighter security. But as the security and red tape around the checkpoint increase, so does the terrorist activity. Your part in the story is as just another cog in the Arstotzkan bureaucracy. You get to see the story unfold firsthand though, through the terrorist attacks as well as through the plight of would-be migrants, refugees, visitors and drug smugglers that seek to cross the border. Oh hey Georgie. Come on man. You're a cool guy, Georgie. You also get bits of information from newspaper snippets, as well as talking to Arstotzkan government officials. Oh, Jesus!
Are we the baddies?
It's a bit greyer than that really. At a certain point you'll be contacted by a secret organisation called EZIC. EZIC claims that they're not responsible for the terrorist attacks, but they do want to overthrow the Arstotzkan government, which they claim has become bloated, weak and corrupt. Hey, I earned those bribes. You can help EZIC by doing secret assignments for them, but in the end you don't have to and it doesn't matter. On day 31, whether or not you help EZIC, the checkpoint is hit by its biggest attack yet. EZIC agents kill the guards and try to destroy the wall in order to allow people on the other side to rush through. From there the game ends. The endings you get are as follows. Number 1. If you're a bad boy, do at least 4 tasks for EZIC and allow them to destroy the wall. EZIC takes over, gives you a job, and moves you and your family into a nicer apartment. There's a lot of talk of completing the revolution though. Let's go for killing and putting in gulag people you don't like. 2. If you're a bad boy and help EZIC even once, but stop them from destroying the wall, then your association with EZIC is found out anyway, and you're executed for treason by the Arstotzkan government. 3. More curious ending this one. If you help EZIC, allow them to destroy the wall, but shoot the agents anyway, well, EZIC takes over, but it's made very clear that you and your family are not safe in Arstotzka anymore. 4. If you associate with EZIC, but see the writing on the soon-to-be blown-up wall, you can try and escape the country. With a lead from Georgie, who seems to have gotten really good at this drug smuggling thing, you can get out of Dodge with some or all of your family, depending on how much money you have to pay the counterfeiter. 5. If you're a good boy, never associate with EZIC and shoot their agents before they blow up the wall, you get the best ending. The wall is patched up and the creepy agent from before clears you of suspicion. The border opens and you go back to work. This is how you unlock endless mode, if you just like doing the paperwork parts with no story I guess. 6. If you're a good boy, never associate with EZIC, but don't shoot their agents before they blow up the wall, you're sent to prison for sucking
Ass! Ass! Piss! Ass! Ass! My cousin and I touched wiener! Wiener! Wheat! Winter! Winter is a cold time of year!
It all started with a few moral choice actions. Alright, should you play this game? What are its flaws? Well, it can be a bit boring sometimes, and the days can drag. It's also not fun, but not all games really need to be fun. They can be scary or sad or just something you take in. And to copy what someone else said, Papers, Please is one of those games where you can say you don't like ... and the other person can turn around and say, well, that's the whole point of ... And if you use that argument, which I do agree with, then yeah, from a technical viewpoint, it's pretty flawless. No bugs or broken stuff. I did like it, and I give my recommendation. It might not be for everyone though, like if you play games to have fun and unwind. But hey, if you want to give it a go, it's only around $10 on GOG or Steam. It goes on sale every now and then, but PC is pretty much your only option apart from the PS Vita. So if you're one of those freaks... Okay, I'm one of those freaks. Thanks for watching. Ah yeah, you don't like my son's drawings. I spent half a day's wages on those crowns. Stay the fuck out of Stotska.